Hi, I'm Peter Rowlett.
And I'm Katie Steckles. And Peter, what is today's mathematical object?
Today's mathematical object is an area the size of Wales. And Wales is for those who are not in the know, Wales is a country in the UK.
It's about the size of Rhode Island, right? I don't know.
I don't know. We will get to this.
Yeah.
But I thought it was an opportunity to talk about units in a couple of different ways. To start with, there are some daft units out there. I mean, properly defined daft units in some cases not properly defined. The thing that got me onto this recently was I came across the concept of the unit, the Helen. And the Helen is defined in a way that 1 millihelen is the amount of beauty needed to launch one ship.
Oh, okay, because as Helen of Troy was the face that launched 1,000 ships.
Yes, so if a millihelen launches one ship, then a Helen launches 1,000 ships. Yes, which is lovely and daft, right? This is good old Greek.
Yeah, half a Helen would launch 500 ships.
Yeah,
I can see that.
The Wikipedia, gotta love Wikipedia, explains that the catalogue of ships given in the Iliad, if you add them up, there are 1,186 ships fighting in the Trojan War. Therefore, Helen of Troy has a beauty of 1.186 Helens.
Right, okay. Like that actual specific Helen. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. I thought it was going to be some kind of imperial or metric Helen, but okay, that's
no.
Okay.
Yes. Anyway, this led me to... There's a whole page of these on Wikipedia, so I might just go through it. There are a lot of them that are... You know how a light year is the amount of distance that light travels in a year? There are some concepts like that. One is a beard second, which is the length an average beard grows in 1 second, which I quite like.
Yeah, because that's tiny, right? That's like...
Yeah.
Like if you can picture how much a beard grows in a day, if you've ever seen anyone on 2 consecutive days that has a beard, or stubble, I guess, it's probably easier to see. Yes. But like... Yeah, that must be very small. Yeah,
so a beard second is 10 nanometers.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it feels like a useful unit, right? A decinanometer, but that's a much cooler way of phrasing it.
Yeah, Wikipedia says it's applicable to extremely short distances such as those in integrated circuits. I don't know if that means it's actually used. I suspect not. I don't know.
I can imagine someone who works on integrated circuits wanting to define a unit like that.
Yeah. There are some that are just a silly division of a thing. You'll perhaps be familiar with the microcentury.
Yeah.
So microcentury is about 52 minutes, which is quite handy because, like at university, that's often how long a class is. An hour, but you have to take a bit off the top and tail. It means that you kind of lecture for a microcentury every time you lecture.
It also induces a sense of deep existential vertigo that, like, micro is like a million, right? So that's like 1 million of those is 1 century. Like, I feel like I should get to see 1 million of those, but I won't, because that's more than a person, right?
Well, it's approximately a person.
Yeah.
Right? But,
wow.
Yeah. It does feel like if you've spent an hour being fed up because you're doing something you're not that interested in, that's like you've only got 1 million.
You only get 1 million of those. Wow. Yeah.
But 2 things are happening there, and the other one is we don't have a good concept of what 1 million is.
Oh no,
and
absolutely.
1 million is actually huge.
Yeah. No one knows. Yeah.
So there is a proper unit called a barn. Do you know the barn?
I mean, it feels like a unit of volume.
It's a unit of area. It's
right.
The scattering. It's a nuclear physics thing. The scattering or absorption cross-section of very small particles, such as atomic nuclei.
Oh, okay, so like the side of a barn. You know when people say, like, oh, you couldn't hit the side of a barn at 100 paces or whatever?
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, a barn is 1 times 10 to the minus 28 meters squared.
Okay.
So it's teeny. Because it's nuclear physics.
Oh, of course.
Anyway, but they have derived from this the outhouse, which is 10 to the minus 6 barns.
Right.
And the shed, which is 10 to the minus 24 barns. I just think, why not? You're using a daft word, why not carry on?
Yeah, well, it's like there's a maths concept of buildings that contain like rooms, and they're using a known set of structures, I guess, to determine a set of related concepts.
And then if we're deriving things from other things, there's donkey power, which is about 1/3 of a horsepower.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Lovely. 250 watts is what it says here.
Yeah, I mean, the idea that we have horsepower like, I guess makes sense because people used to use horses to power things, but like the fact that it's become one of the standard units that you can measure mechanical power in is great.
Yeah, and persisted. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's a daft unit that sort of isn't somehow. Yeah. Last couple I've got here a mixture is again mixing a very big thing and a very small thing. So one of them is the attoparsec. So parsecs are used to measure interstellar distance. A parsec is 3 and a bit light years.
Yeah, or of course in Star Wars they're a unit of time, but no one mentions that, right?
Not best thought about.
Let's not get into that. Yeah.
Yeah. And various attempts to retro sort that out.
No. What he meant was the most efficient route. No.
Yeah. Atto is 10 to the minus 18.
Yeah, that's like one of the really... Is that one of the new ones? It's not quite, is it? There were some new ones that came out recently that...
Yeah, new prefixes.
Yeah.
But I can't remember how far down the scale they were. Yeah. Anyway, so an attoparsec is about 3 centimetres.
Cool.
Yeah. About an inch.
Yeah. We already have the inch for that.
Yes.
Although I do have a measuring tape that does centimetres and pi centimetres, which is on both sides of the measuring tape. On one side it's measuring in centimetres, and the other side the units are pi centimetres,
okay.
Which is the correct way of pronouncing that. But the reason it exists, it's actually a proper like tool that's used by... I'm trying to remember what the word is. I guess like tree surgeons,
okay,
like people who work with trees, foresters, lumberjacks, whatever you call them. Because if you want to measure the diameter of a tree, the easiest thing is to measure the circumference. So you put this tape measure around and you measure the circumference in pi centimetres and that will tell you the diameter of the tree. And it's a really lovely object because it's like a really nicely made, well-manufactured thing because it's got to be a precision tool.
Yeah.
And you show it to someone, you're like, what is this for?
Yeah.
And it takes them a minute to figure out what you could do with it. But it's actually really useful, especially for something like a tree where you can't easily measure the diameter because unless you're cutting it down, I guess.
Yeah.
But you can only really get around the outside of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so about pi centimetres.
So you're putting the pi in the unit so that you don't have to muck about with it in your calculation. I quite like that.
Basically.
The last one that I have here is the barn megaparsec. So as we say, barn is a measure of area, a very small measure of area. A megaparsec is a very large unit of length.
Yeah. This is incredibly long, thin cuboid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, a barn megaparsec is about 3 mil. It's about 2/3 of a teaspoon.
Okay, cool.
Do you want a barn megaparsec of sugar in your tea or whatever?
Yeah, well, exactly, yeah.
Anyway.
Wonderful.
So that's my daft units.
I was going to say my favourite daft unit is the pint, which we kind of officially defined. I believe this was at a maths jam or sometime when we had some mathematicians in a pub. But we determined that the pint is actually a fairly versatile unit in quite a lot of different quantities. Right. So it's obviously a quantity of liquid, but it's also a unit of time. Because if someone says, how long are you staying in the pub for? And the answer is about a pint. Right. That's like about 20 minutes.
Okay,
and it's a it's a reasonably well-defined unit. Yeah. And then also you can make it a unit of length. Because a yard of ale is 3 pints. So it's about a foot in length, I guess, to some extent. Yep. And then some slightly less useful units you can measure with it, because it technically can be used as a unit of attractiveness, if that's the way you measure attractiveness, like how many pints.
Yep.
But I'm constantly on the search for more things that you can define in terms of pints. So if anyone has any suggestions, please get in touch.
Cool. Anyway, and then this reminded me of an interest I once had in the way that the media uses things. Because, so for example, the football pitch, or in America, the football field will be used. So what I've got a bunch of these, and I've got some headlines that I found that are representing this. So the headline here is major solar farm the size of 170 football pitches moves forward.
Right.
Or the American one is Europe's largest solar plant, 2,600 football fields in size. You know, that's the sort of thing. You can lay out solar panels on an area, and a football field is also an area, and therefore use the football field.
It kind of gives me a sense of that in my head. I can picture what that looks like.
Yeah, some of them do
Maybe.
that better than others. But the amusing thing is the way that some of these are almost standardized in the media, that you will see the same sort of things coming out. So if it's bigger than a football pitch and you need to do it, you seem to get the Isle of Wight.
Right.
So
yeah.
an Isle of Wight-sized iceberg breaks off from Antarctica, for example.
I can roughly tell you how big that is because I've been there and driven from one side of the Isle of Wight to the other.
Yep.
Because there's not a lot to do, if I'm honest. But you often end up driving from one side to the other.
Yeah.
So I can kind of picture that.
Yeah. And the US version of that seems to be Manhattan. I'm not sure that these are at all equivalent, but that's the sort of big but not huge thing. So I've got 7 times the size of Manhattan, the African tree planting project making a difference. So yeah, you can sort of imagine that you're planting trees on 7 Manhattans. Scaling up from that, you seem to get, this is where the episode title comes in, because this is where you get the Wales, or I reckon America it's the Rhode Island. You've sort of got a small state there. It's much bigger than an island. So scientists solve mystery of Antarctic hole twice the size of Wales, that sort of thing.
Right.
There's a $268 million ranch for sale that's half the size of Rhode Island, that sort of thing. Yeah, good stuff. And then, getting bigger than that, you get to, in the US, you get to Texas. And in, I don't know, the UK, you seem to get to France and Germany combined. Yeah. And this phrase, if you search France and Germany combined, it comes up quite a lot. So. But the ones I've got here, an area roughly the size of France and Germany combined has already been opened up to exploration for deep sea mining. And I've got one about flooding in Queensland, flooding affecting an area the size of France and Germany combined. I mean, this is just the unit, right? That's how that works. Yeah. And NASA have predicted that an asteroid could hit the Earth that's affecting an area the size of Texas.
Well, yeah, they're kind of... Okay, it makes sense that they use this, but it is just hilarious that they have these standard units somehow that they've kind of settled in as the kind of... That
nobody... I mean, I'm sure nobody's sort of sat down and defined these. This isn't like an SI system, but somehow they've all taught
Secret
each other.
international cabal of journalists. Yeah.
In length, I reckon it's the double-decker bus.
Yeah, but is it the height or the length of a double-decker bus?
I think the thing that I saw is Britain's biggest pothole is length of a double-decker bus.
Right, so length across along the floor,
Yeah, and yellow school buses in America. And the other one is the blue whale.
Yeah. No one knows how big one is. You've never seen one.
No. So this is where it gets to be more... The more of these you look at, the more of them you find where you think... Wait a minute, like the A380, which I believe to be a plane.
I thought it was a road, but all right. Oh, the Airbus A380, okay.
The Airbus, yes.
Yes, okay.
The A380 is the same length as 2 blue whales, is a claim that I've seen actually a few different places.
All I'm hearing is that a blue whale is half the size of a plane, so...
Yes, and I sort of know how big a plane is. This is a huge plane.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen a whale skeleton in the Natural History Museum in London. Does that give me an idea of the size of a whale-ish? I don't know.
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah. I've got distances, because that's the length of an object, of course. But then once you get sort of bigger than that, you're into, again, football pitches and football fields.
Yeah.
So there's a wind power... it says wind power industry faces size problem as blades get longer than football pitches.
Wow.
So this is opening up the idea that the football pitch is both an area and a length.
Yeah.
In that way.
Yeah.
It's handy. If it gets bigger than that, you're on a city block.
Yeah.
That seems to be fairly universal.
Yeah. What is that? We don't have city blocks in the UK. None of our streets are perpendicular to each other. They're all just random. But yeah, okay.
Well, none of a random thing are perpendicular. I think maybe some of them are.
Yeah.
But yes, the Iraqi forces have dug trenches the length of city blocks and filled them with oil, that sort of thing. And then I don't know, you get bigger, but I don't know what the intermediate size is for distance. Yeah,
well, the next one I can think of is distance to the moon and back, which is...
so I've got circles of the Earth.
Right. And of course, at the other end, you've got the thickness of a human hair, right? That's the...
Yes, well, I have that on my list. So somebody, David A. Linden, had made a micro sculpture of Stonehenge.
Oh, of course,
with stones, and it says 0.1 to 0.7 millimeters tall, the same thickness of one human hair.
Yeah. There is a real industry in news stories about people who've made very tiny versions of things.
Oh yeah, there was a whole exhibition in a museum near where I live of things. They're all built in the eye of a needle.
Yeah.
You have to look through a microscope to see them.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was quite cool. Yeah, I've got Americans purchasing more than 700 million marshmallow peeps and consuming 16 billion jelly beans every Easter. And it says enough to circle the Earth nearly 3 times.
Oh, wow.
And
like end
this
to
is
end?
the sort of thing where I... But what does that mean? I mean, it's
which orientation are the peeps in? Are they standing next to each other? Are they end to end? Or that makes a big difference, right?
Well, I imagine the worst case, right? You've got to do it the length way to make the number bigger, surely.
Yeah, the more impressive number.
But like, what does that mean in terms of like you know, we said you've been to the Isle of Wight. You can sort of imagine a forest fire the size of the Isle of Wight.
Yeah,
that's kind of reasonable. But lining up jelly beans, I don't understand what 16 billion jelly beans is. I can't get that concept in my head.
No.
But circling the Earth 3 times in jelly beans, oh yeah, got it. That makes perfect sense to me.
Yeah. Like, you just set off following this line of jelly beans, obviously picking them up and eating them. And, like,
of course,
you just keep going until you literally go all the way around the Earth and get back to where you started.
Yeah.
It's just that, isn't it? Yeah.
Just that easy. And the other one is the paperwork mailed out each year by the IRS could circle the Earth 28 times.
That's impressive. An inefficient postal service is what that is. It just sounds like they could have taken it more directly.
Yes.
Yeah, the most fun I've seen this kind of thing lead to is again at Maths Jam, because this is just where all the most ridiculous maths happens in my life. Is that one of our regulars pointed out that if you because a double-decker bus is whatever, there might be an official measurement for that, but you can sort of say it's like about this many meters, and if you define it to be exactly 14.566 meters, then one area the size of Wales is exactly 100 square kilo double-decker buses. So you can actually then start to convert between these units, and work out what the derived units of journalism are.
Yeah, and how consistent are they?
Yeah.
Should we do height?
Oh, go on.
The smallest height, I think, is Nelson's Column.
Right. That's not small.
Washington Monument, Statue of Liberty, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's like, so HMS Queen Elizabeth is taller than Nelson's Column.
Right.
Or an asteroid 3 times taller than the Washington Monument is going to pass close to Earth, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
There's a wind turbine higher than the Statue of Liberty. I mean, again, these seem not unreasonable because people will have visited these things.
Yeah.
So if you're being told, oh yeah, near this town they're going to build a wind turbine higher than the Statue of Liberty, and you've been to it, you can sort of get in your head, that's not unreasonable, I think.
But then do they do Mount Everest? Because I guess once you get to that level, you need that level of big. But then...
So it builds up, right? You've got Big Ben, Big Ben and Seattle Space Needles, they're pretty... You know, so if your wind turbine is twice the height of Big Ben, apparently you get furious.
Right.
But also, it's like a wind turbine is a thing with a height. The other one that I've got is they've managed to collect enough trash bags of leaves to match the height of the Seattle Space Needle 3 times.
Why would you measure that as a height?
I don't
Surely
know.
that's Olympic swimming pools.
It's a volume.
That's a volume. Yeah. Maybe
Yeah.
it's an unimpressive number of Olympic swimming pools, and that's for what else can we do here? How many times around the Earth is it? Not even one. Oh, God, let's go high. Yeah.
Yes. And the Eiffel Tower is, of course, the other one.
Yeah.
And the Empire State Building. Also, you seem to get the Empire State Building in depths. Ooh. So there's a lot of sonar images that are 16,000 feet underwater, equivalent to about 12 Empire State Buildings stacked on top of one another. 12 Empire. The phrase Empire State Buildings stacked on top of each other comes up quite a lot.
Yeah, I mean, if you, I mean, thinking quite ex-KCD thinking here, but if you did stack 12 Empire State Buildings on top of each other, the bottom one would get crushed, right? They wouldn't hold up for very long.
Yeah,
and they'd be very wet.
if you stack too many Empire State Buildings on top of one another, you can switch to the Mount Everest, as you've said. Yeah. Which, again, I've mostly seen, I think, to do with mountains. There's a course in a particular park that's 100 miles long and involves about twice the height of Mount Everest in descent.
Right.
Because I guess you're going up and down all the way for the 100 miles. Yeah, volume, you mentioned. The only volume that I've got is Olympic swimming pools.
Yeah, well, that's the standard unit of volume, of course.
Yeah, but it's just used in this daft way. Thames Water have pumped 72 billion litres of sewage into the River Thames since 2020. Well, I don't know what that means. Is that a lot? Is that
How
a
many
little
bags
bit?
of sugar
Well,
is that?
It's roughly equal to 29,000 Olympic swimming pools. And now you've got it, right?
Yeah.
Very clear.
It's a lot, right? That gives you that it's a lot. But I would question how many people have ever seen an Olympic swimming pool, because we had the Commonwealth Games in Manchester a million years ago. And as a result of that, we've got a full-size proper swimming pool.
Right. Yeah.
And like, when you see it, you're like, oh, that's big.
That's way too big. Yeah.
Like, you see them on the telly and you're like, oh, they're just having a nice swim. And then you actually see one in person. You're like, oh my God. Because they actually split it into multiple pools for normal people to just go and swim up and down in. But if you put the full length in, it's like, oh, wow. So, you know, giving that as a reference is like almost meaningless to some people, because they'll picture whatever the swimming pool is that they regularly go swimming in, not an Olympic swimming pool.
Yeah, that makes sense. But also, I just think the 29,000, where does the point come where you need to also do that number? Because that's a big number.
Yeah, how many of the North Sea is that? Like,
Yeah. And then you also get it for things, I mean, that's pumping water. The other one that I've got here is Apple's cash reserves would fill 93 Olympic swimming pools.
In what form? Like coins?
In dollars, dollar notes or something. But I have never put money into a swimming pool, even a normal sized one.
Yeah, is that like a Scrooge McDuck thing where you can just dive into it?
Yeah, it must be. Weight.
Yeah.
Weight starts, I think, with elephants.
Right.
During your lifetime, you will eat the equivalent of 6 elephants in food.
Oh, wow.
Apparently, 60,000 pounds of food, the weight of 6 elephants, it says. And then the next one up is fully loaded 747s. But I wonder if that's going out. I don't know if there's still, a lot of new planes. But a lot of new planes are explained in terms of blue whales and things. The 747 is still in people's heads, but the A380 needs you 2 blue whales to get you to really know what that's like. But yeah, the Grand Canyon Skywalk is designed to hold the weight of 70 Boeing 747s.
Wow, like a bridge across. Yeah, oh my God. And
then I couldn't really find a bigger thing until you get to, or I couldn't think of a bigger thing, I don't know, until you get to the Jupiter. But yeah, but that seems to only be used for things like this. Astronomers find a planet with 3 times the mass of Jupiter. Reasonable to compare a planet that you found to another planet. That seems fine.
Isn't Jupiter entirely made of gas? Like, surely it can't weigh that much.
The mass of Jupiter, let's say 2 times 10 to the 27 kilograms.
Right.
I've learned, again from Wikipedia, that an Earth mass is a unit of mass equal to the mass of the planet Earth.
Right.
Which I suppose I didn't need telling. And that's about 6 times 10 to the 24. So Jupiter is quite a lot bigger.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's massive.
But it's not as much bigger mass as it is bigger volume, I guess, because you're right, it's gas, not. Yeah. I got a couple of last areas. One is energy.
Okay.
What would you measure energy in?
I don't know, atomic detonations or the asteroid that killed the dinosaurs.
Ah, I didn't think of that. That's a good one. Yeah. It seemed to be specifically Hiroshima bombs. Sometimes it's atomic bombs. I don't know if you also get it for hydrogen bombs. I don't know how these things work. But anyway, Earth is heating at a rate equivalent to 5 atomic bombs per second, or 2 Hurricane Sandys.
Right. I mean, I guess it's sort of, it's a different form of energy, right?
Yeah. But I just, again, I don't understand what that means. It's...
Yeah, it's a lot of stuff moving around, which I guess takes energy, but it doesn't feel like the same kind of energy as heat energy.
Yeah. And then the smaller unit is... to power a home.
Right.
So, for example, the US is putting in enough solar to power 70,000 homes on old nuclear weapons sites, apparently. But you get this sort of power this many homes or power a particular town. You know, you choose a town that you want to power. Yeah. The last area I've got is information.
Ooh.
What does information come in?
I don't know.
I've got encyclopedias.
Okay, yeah.
So, and I've got this nice mixed up one that I found, which is, imagine having to wade through enough information to fill a shelf of Encyclopedia Britannicas stretching from Chicago to Pittsburgh, which is, there's a length in there as well.
Yeah.
And Libraries of Congress is the other thing. But yeah, enough transcribed testimony to fill the Library of Congress.
I mean, is it my new theory that there's the unit of information, the pint, is how much information you can communicate over a pint?
But then actually, I don't know, again, whether this is something that, like Encyclopedia Britannicas are old. Yeah, I mean, it's still published. But, of course, you get the Wikipedia.
Yeah, or the modern equivalent, the Encarta CD. Oh, sorry, the historical equivalent, the Encarta CD.
Of course, absolutely. But yes, I've seen this universe in a box has enough astronomical data to fill 30,000 Wikipedias.
Right. But it's constantly getting bigger, isn't it? Like, it's not a fixed size.
Yes, that's true. It doesn't say when, Wikipedia. I've got this mega one. There was a company making the world's biggest cookie.
Excellent, yeah.
In Flat Rock, North Carolina. Has announced that the world's largest glass of milk will tag along to the big cookie
Ace,
event.
yep.
And
do you ever feel like some people need something better to do with their time? And
then you realise you're doing a podcast about daft units. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Don't throw stones. The immense cookie will be 100 feet in diameter, or, as the cookie company's press release points out, the size of a basketball court, 1/3 of a football field, the length of a blue whale, the length of a Boeing 737, or width of the stage at Radio City Music Hall.
Wow, I'm glad you said "or" there, because otherwise I'm like, what, added together? It's just a lot of formats.
Yes. No, it's giving you a range of options. If you can't conceive of one of those things, you've got lots of chances. Yeah. It also tells you about the weight of the cookie, which they think will be 40,000 pounds. Which again is pointed out as being the same weight as 4 elephants, or one 40,000 pound bag of feathers.
Yeah. I mean, strictly yes, not particularly useful.
No. So yeah, the milk, it's going to be 4,000 gallons, but they don't bother conceptualizing that for us.
Now what? Like, how many Olympic swimming pools is it? I need to know.
Yeah, I think it's just all these things it's obviously a good thing to try and conceptualize these massive numbers, and it just amuses me when it misfires, because there are some of these which we've said are quite okay. They're quite sort of reasonable things. I mean, if you live in America and you live on a city block, knowing that something is the length of 3 city blocks is a meaningful thing, because you might know that shop's 3 city blocks away or whatever. Perfectly reasonable thing. When you're getting into tens of thousands of Olympic swimming pools of money, it's just whatever it was. I can't remember. It just doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, I think these sort of standard units of measurement, I guess the idea of these is that it's something you might be familiar with because you may have seen one in real life, and whether or not these references remain sort of current for young people today, or whether they're going to need new ones that kind of keep up with the sorts of things that are part of the normal human experience. But definitely. It is a really nice way to take something that is a large quantity or an unexpectedly small quantity or whatever, and actually give you a sort of vague idea of how it works, but you kind of need to make sure that you're doing that in a way that's helpful. And as you say, if you've got like a huge multiplier times the thing, then it suddenly becomes meaningless again. So I think people are using this well, but you need to be careful with it. So the best place to find both me and Peter is at finitegroup.co.uk, which is a mathematical community with a Discord and monthly live streams, and whose members were able to listen to us record some episodes from this season of the podcast.
And are listening right now, which is quite exciting. Katie and I both blog at aperiodical.com, which is a mathematical blog where you can also find more episodes of this podcast.
And if you have any thoughts or suggestions or your own unit comparisons you'd like to share with us, you can email objects@aperiodical.com.
The music is Funk Game Loop by Kevin MacLeod, licensed under Creative Commons.